The Blazers are winless in preseason. Is it time to start worrying? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Locked On Blazers.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. Listen to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Available wherever you get podcasts and now also on YouTube. We're pushing for 1,000 subscribers on YouTube on Halloween. We are close to 600 as I record this. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and support the show. Head on over to YouTube and subscribe now. It's a great way. It is a great way to support the show. Helps the show become more visible, helps it grow, and I would truly appreciate it. So if you haven't subscribed yet on YouTube, please do that. In today's show, we're talking preseason hoops. The Blazers lost their third straight preseason game, 119-74 to the Phoenix Suns. Yuck. Yuck. I mean, that's it. That's the big takeaway here is gross. But I want to talk about what we saw. I want to start here with some sort of like positive caveats, and then we'll get into what's sort of the issues I've seen on offense, what I've seen on defense, and and sort of where the panic level should be as they head into their final preseason game Friday. Okay. Let's start here. The Blazers have worn me out with how mediocre they've looked. The lineups have been disjointed in preseason. They haven't had everybody when they needed them. In the first preseason game, they wanted to play everybody about a half, and then early in the third quarter, Cody Zeller breaks his nose. Somewhere in there, Nazir Little suffers a hamstring strain. Tony Snell just hasn't been healthy. In today's game, Anthony Simons missed the game. In the second game of the preseason, they held everybody out. They rested Damon CJ. They didn't play Norm. They didn't play Ben McLemore. In this game, Norman Powell only played the first half. Like the lineups all preseason long through 3 games, and really just 2 because the second one doesn't I wouldn't really count it just because of the way they treated it. Through 2 games, the lineups even when sort of trying to play their full complement of guys, they have been disjointed. Like I said, in this game, no Tony Snell, no Nazir Little who missed his second straight game with a left hamstring strain, no Cody Zeller who's still recovering from that fractured nose and subsequent surgery that he had last Friday, and no Anthony Simons who's dealing with a right thumb injury. So that all matters. Like Zeller and I believe Zeller, Nas, and Ants are going to be in the regular season starting 9. Like I think that's going to, or like 9-man rotation starting 9. The Blazers might need 9 guys. In the early 9-man rotation. Like those are 3 your guys who are going to play a bunch off the bench. And if Nazir Little doesn't play, it'll be because he loses out to Ben McLemore because they need another guard. But I think Nas is going to play. I think all those dudes are part of your regular rotation, so not having them kind of changes things up. Super disjointed, right? And then in the first preseason game, you're just kind of feeling it out and trying to figure it out, and there's no sort of go mode. And in the second preseason game, you just let everyone rest, and the results didn't matter. You're just trying to get some run. And Dennis Smith Jr., who's vying to get the last guaranteed contract on the roster, showed out, and it's not a big deal. But then so I could write it off, right? The first couple games I could write off. I didn't think they looked good in the opening game, but I was ready to say, who cares? And then against the Suns, all of those caveats still exist, right? Like all of that stuff is still sort of part of it. And yet they played their guys. This was the night 1 starting group of Dame, CJ, Norm, Rocco, and Nurk. Like this is it. The bench wasn't fully intact, but you've got your 5 starters, and the Blazers have been pushing all summer long, in public and in private, that they think they have one of the best starting groups in the league. I think they'd have a very good starting lineup, but we didn't see it here against the Suns. They scored 11 points in the first quarter. They were down 21 at halftime, and the game was over. The Suns pulled their starters in the after halftime. That didn't only play them in the first 2 quarters. The Blazers played basically a full basically like a 8-minute substitution pattern with most of their starters in the second half, but not Norman Powell. The first guy off the bench was CJ Ellaby. Like this was still not the Blazers' full roster, but it still had a bunch of red flags. Like this was still a little bit troubling. So I guess caveat 1 here is that it's the lineups, we just haven't seen the roster fully there. And I think that matters. Like, I think noting that not the full complement of people haven't been available is important, and we should note it, and it should be part of it. A super disjointed substitution pattern, super disjointed plan, a Monday and then a whole bunch of days off, and then they didn't even play in game 2. So really Dame and CJ and the starters hadn't played for over a week, closing in on 9 days without playing a basketball game. And even then they'd played one half against the Warriors. Like, yes, those caveats apply. I think we should say them and recognize them as real things. It's also a new system. Both offensively and defensively, they're trying to do new stuff. That matters too. It's just lack of integration into the new system matters for sure. And I think the other caveat is learning a new system, not playing very often, and in general, just like the preseason is not an important measure of how good they're going to be. I think all of that is just absolutely sort of baked into. Should you freak out? If the question is like, you've watched them play, they're 0-3, should you freak out? I think the basic answer is probably not yet. But, and I think the but is the problem here. It's like, yeah, they haven't had a lot of time together. Yeah, it's a new system. And yeah, there isn't much emphasis to win beyond the first couple quarters. Like, beyond that, it's not like incredibly important that they win. They're not coming back and playing Dame in the fourth quarter and down the stretch like that. Like, all of that is just undeniably true. But, and I think the but is what I want to talk about to close the show here. Like, I want the caveats up front. I don't think win-loss matters. I don't think the box score particularly matters, but you can see it if you watch these games. And if you didn't watch these games, or if you're not able to watch these games, although some good news, Blazer broadcasts are going to be available on DirecTV, not just their streaming product, but also like the satellite product. There's some real good news in Blazerland. More people are going to be able to watch the games. But if you weren't able to watch the games, what I want to do in the second and third segments is kind of like just walk through what we saw, walk through what I think are the most concerning things for this team. I'm not personally saying, I'm like kind of raising an eyebrow to say, ugh, they don't look good. I'm not freaking out yet, but I think there are more reasons to be concerned than not. So let's talk about those reasons to be concerned in the second segment. But before we do that, let's talk about Sweatblock. It's the number one selling product in the antiperspirant category on Amazon.com. That means it's super popular. You don't need to know much more than that. That is the number one e-commerce site in the world. And Sweatblock is number one in the antiperspirant category. So if you or someone you love is a heavy perspire or heavy sweater, if this is a part of your life, Sweatblock, and specifically Sweatblock wipes, could be the solution that you need. They're really simple, and one use can protect you for up to 7 days from heavy perspiration. They are proven to be more effective than most clinical antiperspirants. And here's how simple they are to use. You just take a Sweatblock wipe, you wipe it where you're going to sweat, in your underarms or wherever you're going to perspire the night before. You go to bed, you wake up, take a shower, and go about your day with confidence. Wear what you want to wear, and you won't have to worry about sweating. Sweatblock is so confident in their product, they give you the dry shirt guarantee. If Sweatblock doesn't keep you dry, you get your money back. It's as simple as that. So why not give it a try? Go to sweatblock.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON. You'll get 20% off your next order. That is promo code LOCKEDON for 20% off at sweatblock.com. Also available at Amazon and at your local CVS. So we talked about the Blazers, the reasons to not be concerned, the obvious caveats for the Blazers preseason. Now I want to talk about the reasons to be concerned, and I think they showed up against the Suns. So, we could delve deeper into the recap and the box score of the Suns, but I think more useful for this is just using this as a jumping off point. The Suns played, no Chris Paul, but they played what was very similar to their starting lineup. You had Devin Booker, you had Mikal Bridges, you had Jay Crowder, you had DeAndre Ayton. Campaign for My Real Friends started at point guard. They had some of their regular complements off the bench, like Cam Johnson and Frank Kaminsky and Abdel Nader, like JaVale McGee. Like this was something similar to the Suns' real lineup, and it was something similar to the Blazers' real lineup, their regular starters. Not everyone else you'd expect off the bench. No Ant, like I said, no Ant, no Nas, no Cody Zeller. But the first, 9 minutes of the game, in a lot of ways, told the story. Let's start with my concerns on offense. The Blazers shot terribly in this game. 6 of 39 from three-point land. Not worried about 39 attempts. That sounds like a totally reasonable number. But they also shot under 30% from the floor. 29.8% from the floor. 29.8% in an NBA game from the floor. Bricks. But I don't care about the bricks. I do not care about the bricks. I'll say it again. I do not care about the bricks. CJ McCollum early on in the game missed some open ones. Damian Lillard twice in the second quarter had a side, pump fake, flyby, sidestep, brick, a shot he makes probably in the 48-50% range. Like, it's just a money shot for him. Robert Covington missed 2 shots in the corner that he can hit. Another one shot of the left wing that's just like right there for him. These are generating good looks generating open looks was not an issue early. It was bricks. And it is indeed a make or miss league, and that matters, right? But like, functionally, the shots, they just miss some shots. And I'm right now, when the games don't count, no reason to worry about the bricks. No reason to worry about it. Note them. It looked gross. Felt bad. Would have felt better if the shots had gone in for sure. But like, not a concern. Not a concern for me. But what I worry about on offense is there just haven't been long stretches where they look fluid. Against the Warriors, they turned the ball over a bunch. Some of the overall turnover numbers are skewed by playing the end of the bench and at the end of games, and it kind of gets ragged at the end of preseason games. But even with the regulars on the court, they're turning the ball over too much. The turnovers are happening. Nurk got called for a bunch of offensive fouls, a couple moving screens, one where he was just clearing out in transition, kind of grabbing the guy behind him to post up in the paint and moving him out of the way, using his hands to create space, and got called for an offensive foul. There's some bad turnovers, and why I point out Nurk's fouls is like offensive fouls or turnovers. But too many turnovers, too many turnovers. The ball, they're trying to do maybe too much on passes, and it's a lot of read and react stuff on offense. Like, it's like the ball goes here, and you can go one way or another. It's like you're allowed to react off where the ball dictates what the read and react is, like, as opposed to just full hard in the dirt motions. They're not, it's not it's more fluid, right? In theory, there's more options, more ball movement, more chances to, okay, if the ball goes in the high post, I can go here. If the ball goes to the corner, I can go here. If the ball's at the top of the key, that's the idea of the Blazers offense, right? It's that it's not as rigid as it once was. There's still structure and plans, and spacing is important, but it's just not as rigid in the movements. You don't have to, not one action triggers another. You're supposed to read and react off one another. That's the idea of it. Here's the problem. It's just not fluid right now. It doesn't look like, even when the ball moves a little bit more, it doesn't ping around and create advantages. If the Blazers score off assists, they're scoring off one cut. The ball goes in, somebody goes backdoor, nice pass. Or a pick and roll happens, somebody slips the screen, you get it inside, one pass to the weak side, bucket. It's not 4 or 5 passes. It's a one pass to an assist and one pass to a play, one pass to a nice play. It's not the ball. This is not sort of the ideal of Blazers basketball that maybe we had envisioned under this sort of new ball movement egalitarian offense. The ball isn't pinging around all crazy and magically. They just don't look connected. And I'm talking the starters. I am, with all due respect to Trendon Watford and Greg Brown, I am not worried about those gentlemen's minutes. Greg Brown always does something fun. Trendon Watford is big and can handle. There are some exciting things from them, but they're not going to play when this thing starts to count. So what I'm really harping on here is what the starters have looked like, and they just do not look fluid on offense. It is some of it is the new system for sure. Some of it is the wonky lineups for sure. That's why we led with the caveats. All of these things feed into what we're going to say here. So I think continue to point those out. But some of it is they just don't look like they're there. New coach, new system, all that stuff. But the offense doesn't look ready. You would like them to be able to say, for 4 minutes against the Kings or 4 minutes against the Warriors, you saw what it could be. The ball pinged around. They looked awesome. The offense looked as unstoppable as we think it might be at its peak. They don't have a 4-minute stretch to point to. They just don't have it yet. And I think that's a concern. Like, you don't need to see results. The Blazers could have got smoked in this game and it wouldn't have mattered. Like, they got run out the gym. They lost. They were down 21 at halftime. And more than that before they kind of totally got their guys out the game, right? Like, they were, and that could have been the same thing, but there was no stretch where you said like, oh, they're going to be good. The Suns are a really good basketball team. Played in the finals last year, and they're going to be one of the really good teams again in the West. I have no doubt about it. This is going to be a really good team. But like, they, more than they were like disrupting the Blazers offense was just, throwing harried passes against pressure defense as traps came, trying to get it out quickly, then trying to make that second pass too fast as the defense scrambled back, and everyone knows where you're going to go with it. Just bad decision-making, too quick decision-making, and then sometimes the Blazers fall back on what they do, which is just Dame or CJ shoot it because they're frustrated with how bad the offense is. How bad the offense is. It just devolves. It just devolves quickly. And I think that's the concern with this team, is like that they're trying to implement this new system, and it's in theory, like theoretically, it is a better fit for who they are and what they want to do. But when it doesn't work, then they fall back on some of their bad habits. And then when you're trying to battle bad habits versus new system versus new plan and all, new plan, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's just, it gets thrown out of whack. And so far in preseason, they've been out of whack and the offense looks bad. I do not care about the missing shots. I worry more about them generating more and better looks more often. If 4 of their open looks go in, they look a little bit better, but I think just the fluidity of the offense is still a problem. And I think that's a concern. When we come back in the third segment, I want to close out the show, talk a little bit about defense, and then talk about what we need to see for the end of the Blazers preseason. They play their final exhibition game Friday in San Francisco against the Golden State Warriors. So that's what we'll talk about to close the show. But before we do that, let's talk about betonline.ag. We're entering a weekend full of college football and pro football. In fact, all weekend long, you can watch folks play out on the gridiron, a little American football for you. You can also bet on all the action, and there's no better place to do it than betonline.ag, your number one source for all things pro and college football. They got real-time updated odds on all of the games, props on the games, contests all weekend long. And listen, you don't have to just bet on football. You can bet on basketball. The WNBA finals are happening. The Major League Baseball playoffs are happening. There's a whole bunch of action. There's also boxing matches, your favorite casino games. So if you want to get on any sports betting action, head on over to betonline.ag. You can do it on your phone or your computer. And make sure you put in the promo code LOCKEDON. You'll get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That is a 50% match on the first deposit for new customers. That's BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. So we talked about the Blazers preseason and why it's probably no reason to worry yet. But we also discussed the Blazers offense, which just doesn't look good. Even outside the bricks, it just doesn't look good. If they were generating a bunch of layups and smoking layups, sure. But it seems like they're, one or two passes and then the movement breaks down, or they're just trying to force stuff, and they're not making high level smart reads. They're just not comfortable in what they're doing. But I want to flip it to the other side of the ball. Just like as a caveat, I think they're going to be fine on offense, because even if the system breaks down, they still have Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, and like those two dudes can just dribble into shots and keep you afloat. I am a little worried about the defense, though. If I'm keeping it $150 with you, this is like the offense is changing functionally for sure, but the defense is also like a drastic change, and they sucked on defense last year, and they have relatively similar personnel. Like, just add in Larry Nance Jr. and Cody Zeller. Is that sort of like a game changing defensive look? Yes, they should be better on defense. They don't look it yet, and I think that's a problem. So what they're doing on defense is, many of you have heard me talk about this a bunch, but if you're a new listener, welcome. Let's kind of just like break through the sort of the basics, and then we'll get into sort of more specifics. They're coming up higher on screens. So when there's a screen on the ball, they're sending the big man to like to show to the screen, show to the ball, cut off the ball handler's drive, and then sprint back and recover. But when the big man shows, you have to help on the backside. It's what they call tagging the roller. So when the man who sets the screen rolls to the rim, someone on the opposite side, usually the opposite side corner, will come all the way in and tag the roller. So touch the roller, prevent that entry pass, and then as you recover, you kind of rotate and scramble back from there. It's a more aggressive style of defense. It maybe should be, just in general, like you think it should be more effective, or if nothing else, it'll be a little bit different. And right now, it just seems like a different way for the Blazers to get carved up. They're bad at it. I don't know any other way to put it. There are moments when you say, "Oh, that was it." They cut off the first action. They scrambled back to the ball. They rotated back, and everyone found their man and was, feet set with the ball in front of him on the second pass. Okay, they forced the third pass. Now the dude's taking a jump shot. Okay, sure, whatever. But I don't think they've played 3 good defensive possessions all preseason long. I don't think we've seen a third good defensive possession. It's one good effort, a second good effort. Hey, the ball goes in, but what are you going to do? But then on the third effort, they look out of sorts. Not even out of sorts. That's more like the offense. The defense just looks plain bad, just bad. In a way that you kind of believe, because this was a bad defense last year. Maybe they're just still going to be bad even with the scheme changes. Too early to worry, but here are the things I'm worried about. It doesn't take much to take them out of their rotations. It's not like the ball has to swing around or a guy gets all the way into the teeth of the defense and then it's a problem. Like it's the second pass. It's the second pass and everyone's out of sorts. The screen comes, they have an initial rotation, or the ball goes to the wing and they have an initial rotation and someone who swings over from the weak side, and they just one dribble drive and someone has to help, and then they throw a skip pass over the top. They scramble to stop that skip pass. One more pass and it's easy. One more pass and it's easy. It's just like, it hasn't been difficult. The Suns got catch and shoot threes whenever they wanted. I didn't chart it out because it's preseason. I'm not going to go back and watch. It was regular season. I might queue up the film, but it's like, to me, I think the Suns took somewhere in the range of 8 or 10 unguarded 3-pointers in the first quarter. They missed some of them, but you just can't, there's the thing you can do to prevent threes is prevent 3-point attempts. Contesting versus wide open is probably, somewhat negligible, at least according to my good friend Kevin Pelton, who has convinced me that the difference between a wide open 3 and a guarded 3 is probably negligible statistically. But the way you stop 3-pointers is low attempts, negate the number of attempts, because and you can only do so much to negate the number of attempts. But if you're not close, you're not negating them. It doesn't matter if you're giving up wide open butt naked threes. Like, it's a problem. They had a problem guarding on the perimeter, and it starts with keeping the ball in front of you and then getting stuck in rotations. And it's the same thing. And the change in personnel, having Nurk be further out on the floor. We didn't see Cody Zeller, but like having Nurk further out on the floor and then trying to recover has not helped. It's made them worse in rotations. They look worse on defense because in the previous scheme was just more conservative. You didn't have to scramble and cover as much ground. The scrambling and covering ground requires communication. It requires trust, and it requires understanding, the reading of what the other team wants to do. If they go one way, you've got to X and switch out. You've got to run from the baseline out to the 3-point line and hope that the man who was guarding the person at the 3-point line will get back and cover your guy in the far corner. Like, it's just, it takes a lot of trust and it takes a lot of communication. And I had talked with, I asked the Blazers after the first preseason game against the Warriors if they thought it was more like understanding the scheme or just communicating, just not talking enough. And both Dame and Nurk told me, or said to me, because it's in a press conference, you probably heard it on TV, like that it was more about being where they're supposed to be, that it wasn't about communicating yet. Like, it was really just about like, are we in the right spots and are we following our rules? When you're there, I'm here type of rules. They haven't picked up on that. Now, they haven't played very much, but they don't have the way they haven't had 4 minutes of good offense. They haven't had 3 possessions of good defense where you could say, well, we've seen it. You've seen small flashes, one possession here or there where you're like, okay, this makes sense, but not enough sustained high level defense that I I feel comfortable saying like this is a team that looks right or whatever. They're troubling on defense. The other thing I asked Chauncey Billups after that first preseason game was, or actually this was prior, this was before the preseason ever started, was did he feel inclined to have a dress rehearsal? And by that I mean like playing Dame and CJ something like 30 minutes and running through a full rotation of subs in the third quarter. Like you don't have to play the final 9 minutes or whatever, but like a whole first quarter you play straight up like a regular game. First run through the first subs, the first rotation in the second half like it's a regular game, and then when you would bring Dame back at like the 7 or 9 minute mark, screw it, bring in the end of the bench. You saw what you're going to see. And Billups said he wasn't quite there yet. And I don't think it would make sense to do it in the final preseason game. He could, but it's typically not how NBA coaches do it. So he might have another plan because of sort of the way they've looked. But like in general, to me, it wouldn't make sense that they would do that. So the Blazers might very well be going into the regular season kind of looking like they look, limited chances on the court together, a whole bunch of janky lineups because of injuries, and also just treating the preseason like it is, like it's not super, super important. I think game reps matter. I think it matters in general. I think the preseason is not a great read. Like the results of the preseason aren't a particularly good read. The what doesn't matter. Like, what did they do? Did they make some threes? Did they do this? That doesn't matter. But how they did it matters. Like, I think the predictive part of preseason is not the results or the shooting percentages or any of that. It's how did they do it? Did they make several passes? Are they running more pick and rolls than they did last year? Are they shooting more threes than they did last year? Blazers running slightly less pick and rolls, shooting a nearly identical same 3-point rate. 3-point rate, good. Continue shooting threes. If you have a bunch of good 3-point shooters, you should shoot more threes. That's good math. If you think they should shoot less threes, me and you disagree pretty sincerely. But like the how on offense and defense is, like, how they're doing it is just like they haven't quite answered that question, right? Like the functionality of the offense it doesn't look fluid, and on defense they just don't look connected, and that's a problem. The box score stuff I'm not worried about, the results stuff I'm not worried about, but like the not having good sustained stretches of execution that you could point to and say like, well, they might be there. I think that to me matters. That to me I would be concerned about. And I imagine they're a little concerned. So what I started this podcast with and want to close here is like, should you panic? No, I don't think so. I think it's too early to panic. I think these minutes aren't meaningful enough to panic. I think, I just think of all the caveats I started the show with, I think they matter too much. But we'll say this. The Blazers looked terrible in preseason to begin last season, and they started off the season looking bad also. It doesn't always correlate, but in some ways these minutes matter, and they are an indicator of when the starting group plays together. The starting group hasn't looked that sharp. I'm a believer in this team's offense. I really am. I just think Norm and Dame and CJ is too good for it to get derailed. I think they're kind of like the worst they'll be on offense is something like 11th. Like they're an above average offense, and I think they're going to be really, really good. Like I'm just straight up not worried about them. Defense I'm worried about, because they weren't a good defensive team last year, and they don't look like a better one this year, and it kind of held them back. It was their Achilles heel, and famously, it wasn't a result of the roster. So maybe the roster will correct itself with some upgrades, because they did change the roster a little bit in order to improve the defense. So maybe it'll be there. Maybe the new schemes will make it happen. Maybe it'll all make sense. But I'm worried about them on the defensive side of the ball. And why I say I'm not worried overall is because I think their offense can keep them afloat as a pretty decent competitive basketball team. Like I think they're going to be competitive even if they take no steps forward on defense. But the whole point of this was to show that they could take a step forward on defense, that they could be a little better, that a new scheme would change up what they are, and so far it hasn't been that. Preseason is not the right time to freak out, is not the right time to hit the panic button, is not the right time to just read too much into the results and while out. That is not the move. But it is the time to take stock of what we've seen, and what we've seen hasn't been good. It's kind of not disheartening, but just not particularly inspiring. They have not been an inspiring group, and I think that's the real takeaway here. Friday, they play the Golden State Warriors in their final preseason game. We'll see how much the starters play. I think that'll matter, like how much they want to get these guys out there and do stuff. And we will talk about that on early next week's show. So that's, we will have results from the whole preseason. We'll react to the whole preseason. The Blazers will make their final roster decision and all that. So next week's show, we'll preview the regular season and talk about what we've learned and where we are. And maybe the Warriors game will kind of change where we are now. But I kind of think so far it's an uninspiring preseason that you hope is mostly meaningless. But if it's meaningful, you will know you have seen the signs. The writing will have been on the wall based on what we've seen the last 10 days. To close out this week, I'm going to be joined by a familiar and very fun guest, my friend Chuck, Charles Tuggle. Longtime listeners to me in the podcast space will know who that is. And if you don't, that's my buddy who follows the NBA really closely. Me and him are going to do Blazers over-unders to close out the week. So make sure you come back and listen to that show. This podcast is 5 days a week, free wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. So make sure you're subscribed wherever you get podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Subscribe both places. It's not going to hurt you, and it's going to help me, and I would appreciate it. So make sure you're doing that. And when your friends ask you about Blazer podcasts as the season starts rolling along, tell them that you listen to Locked On Blazers and that you can find us just by searching Locked On Blazers wherever you're looking for podcasts. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.